Apple sponge pudding dessert is such an old recipe, but it's as delicious today as it was back then. My mum used to make it on a regular rotation. I think we used to have apples and then rhubarb and sometimes apricots. The secret is to heat it up and have not much liquid in the stewed fruit, because the sponge mixture goes on top while the fruit is hot, and it bakes until it's golden, and it's just delicious. Served with custard, ice cream, or just slatherings of cream. It's a family friendly one and pretty easy to put together, and this is how I do it. Now you can use any apples you like, and you'll just have to adjust the sweetness a bit. These are quite tart. These are Granny Smith apples, and I've got 7 here. I want about 4 cups of stewed apples, and this is about 1.3 kilos. Now I'm just going to go and peel them. These core removers work good, but they do take a little bit of muscle power. Now you can cut them into wedges like this, or you can cut them into slices. These are tough apples. And I just place them into a saucepan. Sometimes I add the finely grated rind of like half a lemon to the apples, and that's a nice addition, but I don't have a lemon in the house today. Or you can add a couple of cloves if you like that warming spice. So all about the same size so they cook evenly. And I'm just going to put in a half a cup, which is 125 mils of water. And I've got a half a cup of sugar here, just white sugar, and I can always add more after they're stewed, but I'm going to start it off with that because I don't want them too sweet. And depending on your apple variety, you mightn't even need that much sugar. It depends on what you're using. And now I take this over to the stove, and I'm just going to bring it to the boil, that little bit of water that's in there. And once I can hear that water boiling, I place on a lid and I reduce the heat and just slowly simmer them for about 20 minutes, and the apples will release a lot of liquid. And this is a 10-cup capacity. And I just grease it with some soft butter. And I'll set that aside. That's been simmering away for 10 minutes and they're starting to soften. The apples have released a lot of liquid. I'll put the lid back on and check them in another 10 minutes. I'll just reduce the heat just a little bit. So simply into a bowl, I put 190 grams of softened butter, 3/4 of a cup Australian of caster sugar, and I'll put the gram measurements in the recipe on the website, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And using a handheld mixer or a stand mixer, I mix that until it's nice and creamy. Now I forgot to mention, my oven is preheating to 190 degrees Celsius conventional, which is 170 degrees if you're using a fan-forced oven. So then I add 3 eggs, 1 at a time, 3 large eggs, beating well after each addition. Before I continue with the sponge, I just want to show you the apples. They've had 20 minutes and they're nice and soft. I think these need another 5 minutes, and they're possibly a little too dry, so I'm just going to add a couple of tablespoons of water, but they're nearly there. And what I'll do now is just taste them, because they may need some more sugar, and this is totally up to you how sweet that you like it. Maybe 2 tablespoons more sugar. And you know, I think they're ready. I don't have to put them back on the stove. They're nice and soft and stewed. And there's hardly, well, there's no liquid there, and that's how you like it. So the sponge sits nicely on top of the apples. And most important, they need to be hot. So I'm going to put the lid back on while I quickly finish the sponge. I put in 1.5 cups of plain flour and 3 teaspoons of baking powder. Now, someone mentioned, a viewer, that if you're gluten-free, add an extra teaspoon of baking powder. So that's what I'm doing today. And let's see how that goes. Just a little pinch of salt and 3 tablespoons of milk. Make it 4 tablespoons if you're using gluten-free flour. and it'll be a thick batter, and that's how it's meant to be. So don't beat that in, just fold it in until it's combined. There may be a few lumps, but that's fine. So I've got my greased dish there, and I'm just going to pour in the stewed apples that are really hot and smooth that out. And now all I do is put the sponge mixture, well, the cake mixture on top, sort of like blobs. It will spread out as it cooks. So this will take between 30 to 40 minutes to bake in the oven. Now, one last thing my mum used to do was just sprinkle it lightly with a bit of caster sugar, and that sort of forms a little bit of a nice crust on top. But I am going to dust it with icing sugar once it's done because it just looks pretty. And I'll check on it in 30 minutes. So it's been 22 minutes and I've just had a little peek, and it's starting to brown a bit too much on the top. So now I just either cover it with a bit of baking paper or foil, just to prevent it browning too much. So that's actually had 35 minutes and it's ready. If I take a skewer and just on a diagonal put it through on the cake part, it's clean and it feels firm to touch and it smells lovely. One last thing I like to do, just for purely aesthetic purposes, is to dust it with a little bit of icing sugar. And you know, this is a really easy dessert and it's family friendly and it's delicious with custard or ice cream or just cream. Thank you so much for watching. Perhaps you know this one but you haven't made it in a long time, or maybe you've never tried it at all. Either way, I hope you enjoy it and I hope to see you again soon.